Urgent update. A relentless storm of drone attacks has struck Russian territory. Waves of UAVs hit targets non-stop. Meanwhile, Moscow and St. Petersburg face a terrifying seventh day of total internet blackout and mobile silence. The population is completely cut off from the outside world. VPNs offer no escape. Chaos reigns in the streets. Navigation systems have failed. Gadgets are rendered useless. Panic grips the capital. People scramble for paper maps and atlases as digital life collapses. The country teeters on the brink. Russia is sinking deeper into a cascade of catastrophes. Could this be the beginning of the end? Let's break down what's happening right now. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Maria Farafonova here with the latest updates. The drones did not leave Russia alone. Overnight, Ukrainian drones attacked southwestern and central regions of Russia. The Republic of Adygea and the Kiev region came under attack. Around 3 a.m., residents of Maykop, located in Adygea, complained about numerous explosions. There were at least 10 of them. The city was massively attacked by drones, according to Russian media. According to eyewitnesses, windows in apartments were shaking and car alarms were going off. The local air defense system operated for more than an hour. Reports online say the Khanskaya military airfield was hit. The Khanskaya airfield belongs to the Russian Ministry of Defense and is used as a military training aviation facility. According to open data, the airbase has second-class status and can receive aircraft such as the Tu-134 and 12 Il-18 lighter aircraft and helicopters of all types. In Kirovo-Chapetsk, the chemical plant Uralchem was also attacked. Preliminary reports say 2 UAVs struck the ammonia workshop and another hit the polymer production facility. Workers were evacuated to bomb shelters and the shift that was supposed to start work was sent back home. Firefighters, police and ambulances arrived at the plant. Russia is returning to the Stone Age. Residents of Moscow complained that they have had no mobile internet for a week. According to Russian media, it is being jammed. This is how Russia is testing the so-called whitelist, a list of services and resources that will remain accessible during mobile internet shutdowns. Russia's capital is completely cut off from the internet and thrown into chaos. Taxi drivers receive no orders, couriers are wandering blindly, and payment terminals in stores are down as businesses rush to switch to cash. Messaging apps are offline, social media won't load even with VPNs, and the streets are crowded with people frantically trying to get any signal on their smartphones. The Kremlin said that all communications restrictions are carried out in strict accordance with the law and are explained by security interests. As a result, Moscowites have started massively buying paper maps and atlases, since they cannot check anything online. According to Russian media, since March 6, the number of such purchases has increased by 48% compared to the previous week. Buyers most often choose road maps of Moscow and the surrounding region, as well as metro maps and suburban train schemes. Additionally, flea markets have seen a frenzy for old MP3 players from the 2000s. Used iPods are now selling for around 20,000 rubles, as streaming music services are also completely offline. The mass restriction of mobile internet in Moscow has affected courier services, taxis, car sharing, and retail trade. At the same time, such restrictions immediately affect services and sales, since up to 50 to 70% of internet traffic in Russia comes from mobile devices.
Moscow has been without mobile internet for several days now, with the worst jamming in the city center. People can't pay for purchases or pick up orders from pickup points, and stores and cafes are switching to cash. Some are forced to take the metro to get Wi-Fi. It feels like we're back in the 90s, residents complain.
Meanwhile, Russian lawmakers are coming up with brilliant ideas to help those cut off. They seriously propose bringing back public payphones to the streets of every city. Think about the absurdity. First, the authorities themselves shut down mobile networks and the internet, and then suggest that people run through freezing streets to make calls from booths. To make it sound less like a full return to the Soviet era, they even promised to give these payphones access to their controlled whitelist internet.
Payphones are being installed in Moscow due to communications and internet outages. The State Duma believes that payphones should be reintroduced to all Russian cities, but in a modern format, with internet access.
Those unwilling to use payphones are going underground. In Moscow, a black market for communication has exploded overnight. Prices for portable Wi-Fi routers with built-in bypass tools have skyrocketed from 10,000 to 50,000 rubles. Resourceful sellers are flooding the city with SIM cards from Germany, Italy, the US, and Japan, since Kremlin jammers do not yet affect foreign networks. People are willing to pay any price just to stay connected with the outside world. Moscow and St. Petersburg have been without mobile networks and internet for nearly a week. The Kremlin claims that the shutdowns and restrictions are legal and implemented for security reasons. In reality, however, Russians are being cut off from information not because of drone threats, but to control access to news and increase surveillance. Details on the Kremlin's fight against the internet next.
Instead of global network access, digital isolation is not just North Korea's reality, but it seems Russia's future.
Well, what's it about? I don't think I need to explain it here, it's already clear to everyone.
Residents of Moscow and St. Petersburg have been complaining about connection issues for 6 days now. In major metropolitan cities, there is no connection or mobile internet. And no, this isn't a glitch, but a deliberate disconnection of Russians from information.
All disconnections and communication restrictions are carried out in strict accordance with current legislation. That's the first thing. Information on this matter was provided well in advance, so you had the opportunity to familiarize yourselves with the laws recently passed on this matter. This is all related to, well, probably the primary need to ensure security.
Due to the legal security measures voiced by Peskov, communications in Russia are being jammed not for the first time. By the end of 2025, the Russian Federation took first place in the world for the scale of internet shutdowns. The total duration of such shutdowns for the year is 37,166 hours. On average, restrictions were introduced in 63 regions every single day.
The restrictions are directly connected to the need to ensure security and reduce as much as possible the potential danger of drone raids and strikes and so on.
But still, such a long continuous restriction is a first, causing Moscow businesses to lose 1 billion rubles a day.
Experts estimate the total damage to the capital's business over 5 days at 3 to 5 billion rubles. And among those most affected by the shutdowns were traditionally courier services, taxis, car sharing, and retail businesses.
Yes, censorship is more important to the Kremlin than the economy. Media reports say mobile internet is either completely unavailable or only open sites on the so-called whitelist. It includes state services, Russian social networks VKontakte and Odnoklassniki, Yandex services, marketplaces, and government resources.
In total, nearly 2,500 complaints were received. Residents write that their messaging apps don't work and websites and banking apps won't open. Access is only available to the whitelists. The shutdowns coincided with a report from Leningrad Region Governor Alexander Drozdenko about drone threats and a possible drop in mobile internet speeds.
But the catch is that during these days, specifically for Moscow, there was no drone threat. Authorities wrote about a UAV attack back on March 1st, and on the 8th, there was a notice about air defense activity in the region.
Of course, the security argument always works. Under this argument, any actions can be taken. Of course, first and foremost, it's digital control. It's a really very convenient and practical ground for implementing things. There's this great word that I actually like a lot, techno-feudalism, meaning control over digital assets, over life itself through bank cards, through social networks, and also through state-controlled social networks and information resources.
In short, the security narrative is falling apart, especially given the amendments to the communications law, where the FSB proposes blocking the internet even without a so-called security threat.
The conditions for shutting down the internet will be set by Putin, which basically means for any reason he finds convenient. If passed, operators will be required to cut off connections upon receiving demands from the FSB in cases established by the president's regulatory legal acts.
This convenient reason, ironically, but still, boils down to security, but only the security of the Kremlin regime. After all, the less people know, the easier they are to control.
The Russian Federation, in the context of, as I've said, all totalitarian world systems, is now taking very large steps toward a global digital concentration camp.
Although previously Putin said that he would never shut down the internet. But when has the bunker man ever kept his word?
I believe it is impossible to restrict the internet. It is both technologically difficult and then politically wrong.
In a country where the internet won't work, people are left with only one thing: television and consequently Kremlin propaganda, so that no one accidentally learns too much.
Most citizens living somewhere beyond the Urals or in villages with wooden outhouses are basically fine with this, because for decades, for centuries, the idea that we are a great nation has been stuck in their heads. And the fact that we use wooden outhouses there, well, that's just how it is. The main thing is that the external enemy is always kept on its toes.
The Russian concept of digital control includes blocking social networks, specifically Telegram, and the authorities are already openly talking about it, calling Telegram a threat to information security.
The use of those communication systems that are not ours and are not under our control can pose a potential danger to personnel.
Of course it poses a danger, yes.
And such statements have been made in the Kremlin more and more often.
Right now, we are actively navigating complex and often hostile social networks.
That's why the Russian authorities have, in fact, stepped up their efforts with the national messenger Max.
There's a paradox with Telegram. A Russian created Telegram, and yet they banned Telegram in the Russian Federation. That is YouTube and social networks, for example, Facebook, and they have issues with WhatsApp too, meaning anything controlled by the West where Western servers are used for people to access these networks and these messengers. Of course, this doesn't suit the authorities, it doesn't suit the totalitarian system in the Russian Federation, it doesn't suit the Kremlin and the Russian propagandists who have been brainwashing citizens for decades, telling them about a great Russia.
So, digital isolation in the Russian Federation is the new state policy.
Of course, the internet must comply with domestic legislation.
At the same time, the Kremlin is also using good old methods of digital surveillance of people. Starting January 1st, 2026, Russian internet services are required to store all user messages for 3 years. But let's get back to the current internet outages. In response to the dissatisfaction of Russians, the Kremlin stated that everyone should prepare for indefinite communication outages. In other words, Russians are already being told directly, get used to it. The internet is temporary, but isolation, it seems, is for a long time.
In 2026, the Russian economy is showing clear signs of a severe crisis caused by the war and sanctions, with real GDP falling and a record budget deficit. The scale of the crisis is approaching levels seen in 1998. How the Russian economy is slowly but steadily declining is covered in the following report.
In the 4th year of the war against Ukraine, the Russian economy is nearing a crisis. As the EU Special Envoy stated, Russia is approaching a financial crisis on the level of 1998.
Russia is rapidly losing oil and gas revenues, which used to make up a vital part of the state budget. And last year, for the first time, a significant budget deficit emerged. And in 2026, this trend continues.
According to David O'Sullivan, the Russian economy could collapse slowly at first and then very rapidly. After all, the effect of sanctions is not instantaneous. However, over 4 years, the restrictions have dealt a serious blow to the Russian economy.
Russia is already facing serious problems in public finances, high inflation and interest rates. Furthermore, banks have accumulated a significant volume of bad loans issued to industry to finance the war economy.
But still, the EU Special Envoy admitted that even the pre-crisis situation hasn't yet forced the Kremlin to stop the war against Ukraine.
Today, Putin's Russia is in roughly a very similar situation, where stopping this economic model, putting it back on a peaceful track is very difficult and dangerous and destructive for those elites that have formed today within the current Russian regime. So I strongly suspect that precisely for the survival of the economy, and especially as the manifestations of the financial and economic crisis intensify, the regime will instead try to accelerate the war to distract the population.
Some experts predict that a financial crisis could begin within the next 6 to 12 months. At the same time, O'Sullivan emphasized that sanctions alone are not enough to end the war. Further military and financial support for Ukraine is also necessary.
Russian financiers were already warning the Kremlin about the risk of an economic crisis back in the summer. Ukrainian intelligence also stated that in 2026, Russia could face serious economic problems due to the exhaustion of its financial resilience.
Not long ago, German Federal Intelligence reported that Russia is hiding the true economic losses from the war against Ukraine. According to intelligence estimates, Russia's federal budget deficit in 2025 amounted to about $103 billion.
And besides, sanctions don't just affect oil and gas, they affect many communications, economic communications, which accordingly limits the ability to trade on foreign markets, limits the ability to buy various imported goods, components, equipment, machine tools, certain types of machinery, and so on. All of this reduces economic efficiency, and it all increases the cost of those machines, components, and goods that have to be bought through third countries using special schemes and so forth.
The worsening economic situation is a combination of several factors: Western sanctions, falling oil and gas revenues, and a sharp increase in spending on the war against Ukraine. But naturally, the Kremlin claims that the growing deficit and falling revenues are routine difficulties. Russian presidential press secretary Dmitry Peskov stated that these problems can supposedly be solved thanks to macroeconomic stability. But this is far from the truth.
Days of real disasters for Russia. To begin with, missiles struck a strategic plant in Bryansk. But that is far from everything. Russia has plenty of catastrophes even without the strikes on Bryansk. What do we mean? We will explain next.
Storm shadows spectacularly hit the silicon plant in Bryansk, which produces electronics for missiles and drones. The strike was so powerful that the destroyed workshops certainly won't be restored anytime soon.
Oh boy. Oh wow, my goodness. Really? Oh my goodness. Holy shit.
But the main disasters for Russians are happening, of course, inside Russia and without any Ukrainian military involvement. For example, a massive wave of roof collapses that started as soon as the snow began to melt slightly.
And once again, a report about a roof that collapsed under the weight of the snow. Since February, we've been reporting on collapses in various districts of the Nizhny Novgorod region. This week, there's been a report literally every single day. First a school in Knyaginino, then a community center in Zavolzhia, then a transport company in the Voskresensky district. Today, our report comes from the Novoshinsky district. The roof of an apartment building collapsed there.
It's the same story in the Republic of Mordovia. Roofs are falling at night and in broad daylight, right onto the heads of people taking shelter from the cold.
We didn't actually see when the roof fell. When we looked out the window, the roof was already like this, as it is now. Someone was outside, but unfortunately I can't say who it was. He even shouted, a man, I think, because it was terrifying. Terrifying.
And it's like this in every Russian region that saw abnormal snowfall this year. Since no one cleared the snow all winter, it first snapped power lines and buried houses to the roof, and now it's destroying them.
It's an apocalypse in Belorussk. There's no power, no water, nothing is working anywhere.
In the Tver region, there's been no power for almost 48 hours. There's no water, no. There's absolutely nothing. Does anyone know anyone from the Rossetti company? Send them my reel. People are dying here, freezing to death. Are you people even sane? Not a single crew is coming out here. The roads are all buried. People can't get out at all.
That's it. The lift is stuck. How to pull it out now, I have no idea. It's completely bottomed out. We haven't even reached the damage yet. The damage is way over there.
I honestly don't know if the residents who live in this particular entrance are truly lucky or not, but one thing is for sure, they definitely won't have to make any extra effort at all to get home. All they need to do is just sit down on their butt and simply slide right down to their door. On your feet, oh, on your butt, I mean. And here we are. How it looks from the inside. A little hole. People are just trapped in the snow. It's like getting into the building isn't a problem, but climbing out on this slide, sliding down on your butt isn't hard. Holy crap. That's it, freedom.
The collapse continues in Belgorod, while Governor Gladkov, with a bouquet of tulips, decided to talk about how he'd like a quiet, peaceful life and to raise children. So maybe it's time to withdraw the troops from Ukraine then?
Another massive rocket attack on the city of Belgorod. Massive shelling of energy facilities. Emergency crews have already headed out. But despite all of this, men are still going into flower shops, carefully choosing and buying beautiful flowers for their loved ones. And of course, I sincerely wish and hope that there will be as many happy, sunny, gentle and warm days as possible ahead of us, so that all our worries, troubles and concerns would gradually fade away, not just into the background, but all the way to the very back of our minds. I hope that we would only be busy with raising our children, building new schools, and truly enjoying and appreciating how our wonderful, vibrant and blossoming Belgorod region continues to bloom and flourish each and every year.
Well, Sochi is preparing for the summer season of cataclysms. There are already earthquakes there, though much smaller than last year's in Kamchatka, But this is only the beginning.
Whoa, we're shaking a little bit right now.
We're shaking. Marina, quiet.
Marina, calm down. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Dear friends, let me remind you that we live in Kamchatka.
Step back. And floods are just around the corner, which year after year bring hundreds of victims and billions in losses, but the Russian authorities simply ignore it.
My yard is all underwater. That's nothing over there. 5-story buildings are flooded up to the windows. Just up to the windows. Last night they evacuated everyone, broke the windows, evacuated them through the windows. Well, basically the first floors are flooded.
The Minister of Emergency Situations of Russia. If only they brought Putin. Oh my God, what's happening? Oh my goodness. Oh my God, what's happening, damn it? This is a nightmare. I've never seen anything like this.
And here we are sitting in the car. Look what's happening on Donskaya. This is totally insane. We've got like half the car full of water already. This is something else. We're sitting here and it's up to our, look what's happening over there. Oh boy, that's all water.
The homes of ordinary Russian citizens are falling apart like houses of cards. And not because of war or shelling, but from ordinary natural phenomena that happen every year, and which the authorities don't even try to prevent or compensate for because all the money's already been spent on missiles.
What do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments, like the video and subscribe to stay informed about the main headlines. See you soon!